Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. It's always good to have you again on these 30-minute runs through all the key business stories that we have lined up for you from right across Africa. Cairo, Lagos, Nairobi, Johannesburg. Those are our starting points tonight, and we've got you covered. Here's what's coming up. We'll be looking at last-ditch attempts to preserve Kenya's duty-free, quota-free access for horticulture in the EU. Still in Kenya, authorities here have ratified thin SIM technology. We'll be looking at the ramifications for the mobile money market here. And we'll also have an in-depth look at Ethiopia's food security strategy when we return. Let us start in East Africa, where countries have adopted a common position on the Economic Partnership Agreement with the European Union. And that essentially paves the way for the signing of a full-fledged EPA deal before the October 1st deadline. Kenyan officials say the deal needs to go through an internal process before it's ratified. In that time, however, Kenya and other East African Community countries could face higher taxes. If the deal is not signed, Kenyan exports will be subject to higher tariffs. Other EAC countries like Uganda, Rwanda and Tanzania, however, do enjoy duty-free access. Why? Because they're still classified as least developed nations. Kenyan goods, however, will be subject to tax, at least for some time. That is a foregone conclusion, especially after sources in the EU indicated that little headway had been made in attempts to preserve duty-free access despite frantic last-minute efforts. Let's move on to the International Trade Center. It's a subsidiary organization of the World Trade Organization and the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. It has established a trade academy for small and medium-sized enterprises to offer practical and vocational training online for SMEs and trade advisors in the public and private sectors. During the recent ITC conference on SMEs in Kigali, Rwanda, CCTV's Peter Wakaba engaged the ITC's executive director, Arancha Gonzalez, on insights into the exact role of the body and how it leverages information in communication technology to fulfill its mandate.
The role is to help small and medium enterprises internationalize, go international, grow their businesses, export, and through that create jobs, and through that help develop and grow countries. That's the mandate of the International Trade Center. We've been working for 50 years. This is our 50th anniversary, and in this our 50th anniversary, our biggest achievement is that we have been able to adapt to the constant changes in the world economy, to the constant changes in the small and medium enterprises. Let's not forget that when we started 50 years ago, there was not even faxes, let alone emails. So we have been adjusting to serve those small and medium enterprises. It's about building their capacity, it's about providing them with trade and market intelligence, and it's about helping them get to markets. This is the basic mandate of the International Trade Center.
So what exactly is the role of ICT as an enabler or facilitator, especially for people who would normally be excluded by things like distance or circumstances, such as mothers who are nursing babies at home and yet still have to work?
Potential is huge. Technology is a huge enabler of entrepreneurship. Starting with capacity building, we have just now launched the SME Trade Academy. It's an online course and a set of material that any person wanting to become an entrepreneur can tap into, including through e-learning, including mentoring and advisory services through e-learning. You don't have to come to Geneva to be trained into how to become a good entrepreneur. It's also about e-markets, it's about e-commerce, it's about making sure you don't need to physically go to see your customers. They can see what you offer in terms of goods and services by looking into your virtual marketplaces. It's about mobile solutions for payments, for insurance. The opportunities are vast to tap into technology to ease doing business and to embed more and more entrepreneurs in our economies.
Now then, Kenya has finally ratified the use of ultra-thin SIM card technology after a fairly lengthy and very public tussle between key market players and the communication industry regulator. The Communications Authority of Kenya gave Equity Bank the green light to use the tech in the mobile money market, in a move spearheaded by its subsidiary FinServe Africa. Now, Equity Bank's millimeter-thin quite literally. SIM cards can be stuck onto existing SIMs to give handset users access to more than one network without requiring them to get another phone or one with dual SIM capability. Now, the bank had planned to roll out the tech after it won a mobile virtual network operator license in April. Kenya's biggest mobile network operator, Safaricom, however, had opposed Equity's planned use of these ultra-thin SIM cards on grounds of security concerns. Now, both Safaricom and Equity Bank are listed at the Nairobi Securities Exchange to examine what effect, if any, this will have on their respective business models. Today's developments are fairly interesting. Let's look at them through the lens of Samuel Gashohi. He's the Business Development Manager at NIC Securities. He's with me in studio right now. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Now that Equity has gotten this conditional one-year approval to roll out these thin SIM cards, what happens next?
Well, first, it's one of those proud moments to be Kenyan. I think this is innovation. This is another frontier in mobile money and banking, which I think Kenya has now become the benchmark, I think, globally. So I think that's great. And I think that it's a win-win for the customer or the people who are transferring the funds, because at the end of the day, whatever happens is going to be cheaper for them and make it easier for them to access these financial services. What next? I think now is to watch. You can't really win a battle on just price. We've seen that with the mobile networks.
Between Safaricom and
Safaricom, Airtel and the rest. And so I think we are looking for the experience now. They need to bring it out, roll it out, let the public experience it. There has to be a wow factor, a reason for people to feel, I want to use this, as opposed to what's already existent and what they're used to, which is, again, an uphill task, considering we've seen in the past Kenyans can be a little bit patronizing in terms of changing into something new. So
because of network effects, we don't want to lose something that we are familiar with.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, though, if you roll back the clock a few years ago, Safaricom and Equity Bank collaborated on a product, M-Kesho, which, for lack of a better word, didn't really go anywhere. Are there lessons from that particular dud product that we can then apply from Equity's perspective to FinServe?
Well, I think the first thing, the issue there was probably it was done too fast. I think it came as a surprise. It just came out of the blue, and suddenly we had a banking product. This was even before we had the compulsory registration of SIM cards, which has already been done and was driven by the Communication Authority. So now it's actually we are going into territory that has already been charted, in which case M-Kesho was coming in to territory that was not charted. I think the background hadn't been done very well, and now I'm sure Equity will have gone and done their homework and thought out all the different scenarios before coming onto the market. So I think they have learned some lessons, which will, of course, inform the way they roll it out, the way they bring the public on board, the way they bring it out to the public, the distribution networks, etc.
Let's talk about pricing, something that you mentioned a little earlier. As I understand it, Equity wants to, in some instances, cap the cost per transaction to about 25 or so shillings, which is roughly 30 US cents or so, if my math is right. But with pricing at that level, can the system, as a standalone business, will it still be sustainable?
Well, they definitely have a certain amount of capital expenditure they've put away for, rolling out the whole project. Again, it'll be an issue of volumes, because for most of these businesses, it's about how much can they generate in terms of volumes to make it financially viable for them. I think in that case, existing networks probably already have a feel of the market. They already have the volumes, and
quite a few million, so to speak.
Definitely. So the idea would be to bring people on board as fast as possible, so that they can get those volumes that make it, the economies of scale actually justify.
So in this instance,
price
should we expect
range.
to see Equity Bank telling its 8 or so million account holders, look, next time you're in the bank, go over to this counter, pick up a thin SIM card, will activate for you in about 5 minutes. It's quick, it's painless, and so on. Is that what we
I
should
think
expect to
that's
see?
what they need to do. I think that Y factor needs to come out. They need to do it. Don't forget that all the other banks, it's not just Equity doing something. I think the difference is the virtual network. I think we've seen Kenya Commercial Bank and NIC and other banks basically doing different banking products. So I think they're not just competing with Safaricom. There's a lot of focus on Safaricom, but it's a whole revamp of the banking sector and how it's going to be electronic going forward and how it's going to be based on our mobiles and based on our computer systems, and it's on air now.
Isn't that the fundamental difference, though? Because I mean, if I can move money from my M-Pesa account to my bank account and back right now with M-Pesa, what incentive do I have to then switch over to an entirely new system?
Absolutely. You'll have to give me a reason. And that's why I said you need a wow factor, which will lock in those people and so that they can decide. I mean, I think even the old grandmother in the village already understands how to use M-Pesa. Even if you give them a different network, they'll still call it M-Pesa because they think that that's everything, transfer of banking. They have M-Shwari. It caught on pretty fast as well. So I think it's a task that they need to really do right from the word go, because if they make mistakes, in the process,
It
then
will cost them dearly.
it can
somewhere
really
down the
cost
line.
them dearly because they're actually fighting somebody who already has
Quite a bit of
network in place.
experience.
Yes.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, unfortunately, but thank you for your time and your insight tonight.
You're welcome.
That's Samuel Gashore. He's a business development manager at NIC Securities, has been with us in studio. Worth pointing out, however, that in the last month alone, in September so far, Equity Bank shares are up about 20%, give or take. Fairly strong numbers. The market essentially betting that James Mwangi and his team there know what they're doing. Let's move on to West Africa. Cocoa arrivals at port in Cote d'Ivoire, they're up 14.2% to about 1.7 million tons by the 21st of September since the start of the season in October last year. Now, current arrivals have surpassed the previous period by about 200 or so thousand tons, with the previous figure for the last season hovering at about 1.4 million tons altogether. The picture, however, isn't all rosy. There have been some declines in some parts. Exporters estimate about 9,000 tons of beans are delivered to the West African states' two ports of Abidjan and San Pedro, down from 20,000 tons in the same period last year. Quick run through the markets here for you. Let's see what your money has been doing. Focus today on the NSE 20. Some really interesting gains coming through the market today. We broke through 5,400. That had been a key resistance level for quite a while, up 1.86% on the NSE 20. Safaricom, of course, was the most heavily traded counter in trading today. That accounted for about 11.7% of all total turnover in trading today. When we come back, we'll have an in-depth look at Ethiopia's domestic food security strategy. And later on, we'll be looking at the economic benefits of empowering school-going girls. It's an interesting experiment. You definitely need to keep it tuned right here to CCTV Africa. Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. We help you make sense of the fast-changing African business landscape. We take you where the business is happening.
We do know that the strike isn't anywhere near close to coming to an end either. That means that those workers are going to sink even further into poverty.
Welcome back to the program. You're still watching Global Business Africa. Now, Standard Bank has acted as the joint lead manager on the National Treasury of South Africa's debut Sukuk as an Islamic bond in the international capital markets. It's a $500 million instrument with a 5.75-year issuance. It's the largest such instrument from sub-Saharan Africa. It's only the third to be issued by a non-Islamic country. It follows Sukuk issues by the UK in June this year and Hong Kong earlier this month. Proceeds from this will be used to fund South Africa's National Revenue Fund. It also creates a benchmark for the market, which will assist state-owned companies to access diversified sources of funding from Islamic investors. The Sukuk launch follows a roadshow by the National Treasury to a number of international markets, including the UK, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Malaysia. Ethiopia started local seed banks to enable farmers to boost food security over there. The East African countries taking the fight against climate change and food security down to the wire, if you will. CCTV's Penina Karibe has the details on what's hot tonight.
One of the lessons learned from the famine was that farmers needed more information and a greater variety of seeds to cope with the effects of climate change, like the different varieties of sorghum that can be planted at different times of the year to lessen the impact of climate variability. Creation of seed banks was seen as a viable solution. There are now 18 seed banks spread across Ethiopia's Oromia, Amhara and southern regions. Habtemida is the National Wheat and Sorghum Research Coordinator.
We give them training how to produce. For example, this is a hybrid seed and it requires some pre-question, and so we give training to them. So basically the things we provide to these private seed companies: training, enhancing their capacity to produce seeds and also initial seeds.
Ato Alemayahu Makonnen runs a farm that produces hybrid maize, wheat, haricot beans and teff seeds, which he supplies to local farmers. The farm is fully mechanized and uses new technology. Makonnen received funding for his project from the Alliance for a Green Revolution Africa, an independent Africa-based and African-led organization working with small-scale farmers across the continent.
The demand is so huge, but the supply is limited because there are no many seed companies who are capable to produce quality seed for maize, wheat, beans, and other cereal crops. So there is a very big gap between demand and supply.
Food security has been at the forefront of the political agenda. African ministers and business leaders met in Addis Ababa recently for the African Green Revolution Forum. The fact that Africa remains a net food importer despite not having exploited most of its agricultural potential was noted.
We must end the era of prodigal economics, where Africa ignores its own agricultural potential and turns itself into a net food importing region, spending a whopping $35 billion annually on food imports. Yet, 65% of all the available arable land that will feed 9 billion people in our world by 2050, it's not in Latin America, it's not in Asia, it's not in Europe, it lies right here in Africa.
Other experts believe one of the solutions is to focus on helping small-scale farmers increase their output.
For instance, if you look at the multinationals, they only focus on particular crops like maize. And yet in Africa, our farmers grow a wide range of crops. So it is these small seed companies or local seed companies who are interested in producing seed of those other varieties which the multinationals don't touch.
The decision to focus on small beneficiaries is bearing fruit. Ethiopia's seed bank beneficiaries are some of the success stories. Obok Gadisa Gobena has been in business for the last 5 years. He, like Ato Makonnen, also sells seeds to local farmers, having started a store where he packages seed in bags as small as 2 to 5 kilograms.
Ethiopia is having about 84 million and above. So we have to have so many interested seed growers, private dealers like me.
It is a decision that has propelled Ethiopia forward and in less than a decade enabled the country emerge from being a famine-ravaged economy to become the 5th largest in Africa. Penina Karibe, CCTV.
The aerospace and defense industry across Africa seems to be doing fairly well, at least if the homegrown tech on offer at the Africa Aerospace and Defence Event 2014 in Pretoria, South Africa is anything to go by. Angelo Coppolo's over there. He filed this report.
The South African aerospace sector has a long history of looking at the country's natural resources and adding value in terms of research and development, as well as creating products.
We have a big drive for titanium beneficiation, which is very important to not only the country but government as well, so that we beneficiate our minerals. So titanium is a big driver, and there's always the option for partnerships there. So we're doing research all the way from extracting it out of the ground to turning it into aerospace components.
The country's geographic location means that there are many other possibilities.
But three key areas is our fact that we can actually do design and engineering design, because we have a long history of having to do it for ourselves. We also have unique operational conditions in this country, which means we have to tweak aircraft for our specific environment. So that's a key area. Another area is we're very good at beneficiating minerals, whether it be platinum, whether it be nickel, and in this case titanium. So we're very, very good there as well. And also we have a long-standing, proud history as an aerospace sector and an aerospace country. So we know how to actually industrialize.
Technology comes in many guises, and its uses can at times be surprising.
Yeah, this is interesting because this is technology where you don't expect to find technology. You expect to find technology in the front end of a fighter, in a radar and ISR radars, etc., or missiles. But this is Saab's technology. You're sitting under a cool net, which is called a cool cam, which is a camouflage net that also sort of radiates the sun away from the soldiers or the mission workers or whoever it is that sits under this net.
Partnerships and cooperation seem to bring out the best in people, and this is especially true in the defense sector.
We have a lot of our IP, for instance within command and control with the self-defense suites that we use for aircraft and land vehicles. And some of it is IP that we've done together with the South African government that we co-own. Some of the IP we own in Saab.
South Africa's reputation as a high-tech powerhouse and its manufacturing capabilities, which are world-class, augur well for the future. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV.
Let's make a quick run now through commodity prices here for you. A little earlier we focused, of course, on the quantity of cocoa that's coming straight out of Côte d'Ivoire. Farmers over there, however, have been harvesting beans a bit early ahead of the official start of the main crop next month. Nonetheless, however, keep in mind that heavy rain may disrupt some of the crop that you can expect moving forward. It's aiding in the spread of disease over there. We still have more coming your way, including the economic case for empowering schoolgirls. You're not developing if you're leaving half your population out of the picture. I'll tell you why next. Welcome back to the program. A former teacher in South Africa is using tech to ensure that young girls do attend school regularly. Millions of girls right across sub-Saharan Africa struggle often with the cost and the inconvenience of their monthly menstruation cycle. In tonight's Grassroots segment, Sumitra Naidu talks to Glenda Tuts about the viability of her solution to that problem.
It's called the Empower Cup. Made from medical silicone, it's safe, durable and less expensive.
It's easy to insert. You simply double fold and you would insert it. And then when it is where it's naturally supposed to be, it will open and it will form a seal. As long as it is open fully, it will form a seal. It won't leak, it won't move, and it will just stay put. And then to remove it, because the seal works so well, you need to pinch the bottom slightly to release the seal, gently remove it, empty it. It doesn't need to be rinsed or washed. You can just give it a wipe or you can literally just tip it out.
Having gone through an intense custody battle for her child, Glenda had been left out of pocket as a single mother and could not afford sanitary wear. This inspired her to create a product to help schoolgirls around the country who miss school every month for the same reason.
I realized what it was like not having anything. And as a woman, you can't function. On a basic level, you simply cannot work. You simply cannot go to school. you cannot manage your cycle if you don't have access to product.
According to the United Nations Children's Emergency Fund, 1 in 10 girls either miss school during menstruation or drop out of school completely because they simply cannot afford pads or tampons every month.
They were very creative, using rags, using toilet papers. Some were informing me that they were using the top part of a pantyhose and rolling it and insert it to look like a tampon.
So far, over 35,000 Empower cups have been distributed to underprivileged girls in communities across the country. The cups are priced at around $32 each and can be used for up to 5 years, a cost saving of at least $90 a year.
We made sure that we're using a silicone which is a medical grade and approved for the use intended. And also our factory is actually certified by the American Food and Drug Administration with a cleanliness standard.
The Empower Cup can be used by women of all ages anywhere in the world, but Glenda sees it as a solution for young girls in poor communities. Her biggest aim is to keep teenage girls in high school so that they finish their formal education.
You have this normal period that you need to have, and now you don't have the resources to manage it. Then you rather not go in a place during that period that is going to embarrass you. A week of absence from school is a lot of work that's being lost in terms of their education.
It's cheap because I don't have to go to buy some pads, so it's cheaper for me because I'm no longer at all buying some, I have to go to buy some pads. Because even if now I have a 10 rand, I know that 10 rand I'm gonna buy the bread, or I'm gonna buy electricity at home.
Glenda relies on sponsors to fund the manufacture of the Empower cups, which are then distributed to girls in impoverished communities in the Western Cape. She's hoping to reach more young girls in need across the country and across Africa. Sumitra Naidu, CCTV, Cape Town.
Right then, quick run through some currency data here for you just before we wrap up. The Kenyan shilling, of course, dragged lower today, fairly heavy USD demand. The question we're asking with regard to the Kenyan shilling, however, is 89 to the dollar, the line in the sand that the central bank is not willing to let the local unit cross. We've seen it intervene and sell dollars into the market in order to give it a boost and push it back lower down to 88. Before the Naira, of course, down by about a quarter, so shortage of dollar supply in that particular market. Right, here's what we're working on for tomorrow's program. A group of Dutch farmers has petitioned the European Court for an order allowing them to attach Zimbabwean diamonds worth more than $45 million after Harare refused to compensate them for farms appropriated under Zimbabwe's land reform program. Also, tomorrow we'll be looking at the economic cost of the Ebola crisis. It continues to rise across 5 affected countries and, of course, a lot more that are affected by extension. We'll bring you an in-depth look into that particular problem. But that's it for this edition of Global Business. Thank you so much for watching. Do remember you can send your feedback to Global Business Africa at cctv.com. You can check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, wherever you are. So are we. The news flows over there 24/7. We'll see you tomorrow bright and early. I'm Ramanyan.